Welcome to the Secret Resume podcast, hosted by me, Melody Moore. In this podcast, we explore the people, places and experiences that have shaped my guests, those which have influenced who they are as people and where they are in their work life today, or as I like to call it, their secret resume. Before we dive in, I want to tell you about something that I'm really excited about, which is our Being Free membership. We're developing an online community which is designed for people who are interested in personal growth. If you're navigating career transitions, maybe feeling stuck or burnt out, or simply seeking more meaning in your life, then this is for you. Membership gives you access to a range of resources, a supportive community, and monthly group coaching calls. It will allow you to explore what freedom means to you on your own terms. Head to www.liberareconsulting.co.uk/being-free to join the waitlist. So my guest today is John Parkin. John, absolutely thrilled to have you here. Can you just start off by just a short introduction to our listeners?
Hello, Melody. Yeah, it's gorgeous to be here. I am. It's such a fun. I like the idea of starting in a humorous way. Then, if I stuttering away, it's hard, isn't it, to sum up in a sentence what you are? I like that. Anyway, I'm known, I suppose, if I'm known by anybody, for the Fuck It books that I wrote. So I wrote the first Fuck It book, pretty much 20 years ago. It was published in 2008. And then I've written about, I think, 6 Fuck It books in total. But the first book in particular went around the world and sold quite a lot, and also encouraged other people to write books that have got the F word or the S word, whatever, anything with asterisks.
Blame it on John.
Yeah, I was the first to get, because it was quite hard to get it out there in the first place. So yeah, that's mainly what people might know me for, and then done stuff around that, or that subject of letting go. Yes, saying fuck it, but letting go and relaxing, and also between me and Gaia, my wife, the subject of being yourself as well. So yeah, that's it.
I have one of the first Fuck It books that actually has the word fuck written on it rather than the asterisks.
They're very rare,
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think there was I can't remember how many I printed of those, but yeah, they're very rare. You're going to be, I think they've predicted that in about 200 years' time, it's worth the equivalent in today's money of about £35.
Wow. I'll definitely leave it to my daughter in my will.
Yeah, I would, yeah.
So let's, I guess, that would suggest perhaps to listeners that I may have known you for a long time. I have known you for a long time. I think I came on my first Fuck It retreat, and I think it was called a Fuck It retreat at that time. It may have been 2007, I'm thinking. Yeah. So a while ago. So yeah, I've known you for a long time, and really excited to talk through some of this stuff. Some of this stuff I know about you, some of this stuff I really don't. So I think that's
what's interesting. Yeah. We must spend many kind of lunches and dinners together, which is on retreat or whatever you've joined us on.
That's all we do is eat.
Yeah, mainly eat and chat and laugh. And yeah, it's funny because when I was thinking about this, I thought, actually, I'm guessing, well, both Melody and many people wouldn't know about some of these things that you've invited me to dig into. The kind of roots of who I am and what I do and my approach to business, really. So it's been a really interesting exercise. So yeah, there's going to be surprises in here. Maybe for me, maybe you drag out from me stuff that even I didn't know.
Well, let's hope so. So let's start right back at the beginning. I think you and I are a similar age. Your childhood in the 70s.
You're about 15 years younger than me.
Well, yes, obviously I look it, but
I can say exactly how I'm closing on 60. I'm 57 now.
Okay,
and so the 60 figure is there. Yeah,
yes.
As I say it feels really old.
Well, I'm 54 in January, and I was thinking about that the other day, thinking, is that mid 50s then? That was my initial thought. I guess it must be.
I mean, it is. It's getting there, isn't it? That's how you have to. Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm thinking I'm closing in on 80. That's what I thought the day. Yeah.
I came across a thing the other day that was in like a sort of self-help book, for want of a better word. I can't think of a better word at the moment. And it was basically had lots of little dot circles, and you had to colour in a circle for every, I don't know what it was. It must have been every year of your life. It must have been.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not doing that. It's way too much colouring in. But I think it's an interesting thing, isn't it, to think about how long have you got left? And it can be quite
Blimey, you're going
depressing.
there a bit soon, aren't you?
Well, I think it's can be quite a depressing thing, but also quite a galvanizing thing as well.
Yeah.
For me, it was I didn't color it in, but I kind of looked at it and thought, oh, that I'm definitely more than halfway through what they'd given.
It was only really around 50. My 50th birthday, and a couple of years around it, was me realizing that I might have quite a bit of life left. You don't never know, of course, for whatever reason.
You hope.
But I'd not really thought beyond the next decade, I think. I'd not really thought beyond 40. I'd not really thought beyond 50. And at 50, it was the first time I went, oh, there might be 30 years. No, what blimey, O'Reilly. It's funny, it's like a dark room that you only, it's like it only starts to get lit when you get closer to it.
Yes. Yes.
It's too far off before that. So I've talked to people quite a few people. But it's like, yes, it's an age where, I mean, I think often it's like, oh, well, that hasn't happened before. I've been around a long time. That hasn't happened before. It's like, so that some wisdom is, including in business. I mean, you've seen a lot. I've seen a lot in business and economies and politics.
Yes, I had that exact same thought the other day. I was walking along and I suddenly thought, I've done a lot of things. It was a really weird thought that I had popped into my mind. I've done a lot of things. I've seen a lot of things. And it just crept up on me. I hadn't realised that before. So anyway, so we've got so much to talk about, John, but let's go back to your childhood in the 70s. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thinking about, things that have really influenced me and how I am and my character. I can't ignore this patch when I was, well, I don't know how far I remember back, but probably from the age 3 onwards, living in Nottingham with my mum and dad. And my memory of it is really rather dark. My father was working very hard, I think, and playing squash very hard. So he was setting up a business, and he'd just been made partner of like a little accountancy firm in Long Eaton near Nottingham. So I think he was very young to kind of take on such responsibility. He was building a business not from scratch. They had clients, but he was really getting out there. And he must have been stressed. And well, mum tells me actually he was really stressed. And his father had died when he was 17. And he was a very thin guy when he was younger, and he put on lots of weight around that time, and when I was really young. So basically, in those years, I heard he was talking a lot. I don't think he was really. My sense is he wasn't really expressing any kind of grief or about his stress. He was just getting on with things, but then it was there. There was this kind of darkness, and I felt this darkness and grief. I felt a kind of, well, he was talking about death all the time. He'd always talk about people that had, rock stars that had died, this person that had died on a motorbike, and this person had died that. And he was told, I remember him saying at a lunch table once, because he'd been to a doctor close to Christmas, when it's probably like I was 4 or 5 or something. And he said, the doctor says I won't see my kids grow up unless I lose weight. So as a kid, I took that in as my dad's about to die. So I remember sitting there listening as a kid, listening to the radio or with a tape recorder, listening to tapes of things, and worrying when my dad was out somewhere that he'd, get killed in a car crash driving back. So he clearly was, upset, scared, stressed, processing the death of his father in very peculiar ways. that I then picked up. And, there's a lot of kind of, understanding that kids often, they both absorb the emotions in the family and also expressing themselves when they're what's not being expressed. So I think I was almost channeling his grief. So yes, I was a very kind of introspective, melancholic, almost nostalgic kid. I do remember, some of my thoughts from back then. I remember sitting being in the garden, probably age 5 or 6, going, "Oh, those were the days." When I was thinking 2 years before, those were the days when I was in that bedroom. So I was quite, I was quite, I was probably quite, I was probably relatively down, I think, as a child. And I became sick as well, age 3 or 4, very, very sick, with allergies. So I had really bad asthma that would get me hospitalized occasionally, not occasionally, quite regularly. I had very strong eczema as well for years. So that
What was
didn't
it
help.
like being hospitalized when you were a kid?
At some level, I didn't, well, at some level, horrifying. I remember being alone a lot of the time. I remember sterile white in the bathrooms with these massive baths. So I was on my own being injected with the various things. So yeah, not very nice is the answer to that. At another level, I wasn't processing it. I think when you're in pain or you're suffering or you're scared or whatever as a child, there's no time context of it. I wasn't thinking, oh my God, what would it be like to be like this in the future? What would it be like to be in the hospital for 2 weeks? Or what would it be like to come back to them? So I was only processing it in the present, but it wasn't very good. No.
It must have been quite frightening being away from your family,
Yeah,
being on your
yeah.
own.
Yeah, and I think like I don't think my mum would really come to visit much. I think from my memory, my dad would come to visit for like 20 minutes or half an hour a day with stories of gloom. I remember once he came and was talking about his mother who'd had a car crash trying to get to. So, that was the kind of, it's funny. The family, a very Christian family, would have been seen as and portrayed themselves as a happy and clappy and evangelical family. And that was always the idea, that we were a happy family. But I experienced something very different as a child. And then that through the years really was a contradiction there, that underneath there were always the things that weren't said, and maybe kind of levels of depression in both my parents, I think, that was never expressed, never talked about, never admitted actually. And yeah, but it was so I grew up with a kind of a level of hypocrisy, I think, and confusion about what we are. Are we happy, or are we kind of depressed and sad? Are we, exuberant and extrovert, or are we kind of all like this?
Did you feel a pressure to project happiness when you were in public as a family?
I don't think I did, actually. I think my mum and dad certainly were. My dad was very kind of charismatic and laughy when he was out there. So certainly, and if I remember my headmaster in my secondary school when I was, I don't know how old I was, 14 or something, and he knew my dad. He may have been a client of my dad. And he goes, "John, your father, is he always like that? Is he like that at home?" It's kind of a bit like me and I goes, no, he just sits behind the he just sits behind the paper. And so my dad was quite quiet at home. But yes, so there was an idea that we put out there, and there still is the idea. My mum still has the idea of how the family has been. And I did actually, it's funny we're talking now, because I raised this with her last Saturday. I was sitting with her last Saturday, and I said, "Mum, it was quite dark, when I was young." She goes, "Well, you were sick." He goes, No, it was actually quite dark. I think there's a lot of sadness probably around, dad's father's death, blah, blah, blah. And she said to me, she paused for a moment, and she looked at me and she goes, "I've been seeing a lovely series on BBC." So we're not talking about
Yeah, I'm not going there.
No.
And you said that you felt a little bit of an outsider
Yes, I think this is hard to understand, really. Well, I've clearly tried over many years try to understand what's going on. But yeah, I think even within my family, well, being sick made me a bit of an outsider. I remember going into a newsagent when I was 7 or something, and I must have looked, I was out of breath, and then probably maybe my face was red or something from eczema. And I remember them laughing and taking the mickey when I was in there. So, those things, there's just some instances. I do remember that. And within the family as well, I think I was always, well, it's hard to tell how it evolves, but I was the black sheep of the family. And I very, very early on turned away from Christianity, which immediately put me outside that group. And yeah, so in many ways I was different. And I would ask questions, especially as a teenager. I would challenge. There's often somebody in the family, in any family, that when things aren't expressed, does the expressing. And I've met many people who've played this role, the same role. So I would be the one kind of going, hold on a minute, really? You're supporting the government? Oh, really? You think that about people? So yeah, some very judgmental views in the family, very traditional Christian judgmental views that I would challenge. And that then carried on through my life. So in the family, that carried on, but it also then made me, and I think I've been very outsidery since in lots of ways, which is, and then, if I can't, at some level, I think I used to probably explain this as if I can't compete on that field, so whatever that is, whether it's, I don't know what, academically or with girls or with in I don't know what, any level, at some level where I might think, I'm not sure I want to compete here. I go, okay, well then just go to another field, create another field. Which you do. I mean, you hear this from, like, comedians would say, the humor comes out because it's just takes it somewhere else. And so I think quite early on as an adult, I would find different ways to be, because I want them to compete at whatever level people were competing at. And then I've always done that in business. I think it's much easier for me to kind of, rather than, like, if I'm offering, it's very hard to offer relaxation years ago, very hard to offer relaxation and letting go. It's like, it's very kind of vanilla to say these things, but if you kind of go, well, what we're effectively doing is saying fuck it to things, people sit up and notice. So yeah. And then also maybe not the last thing, but I should never say the last thing, should you? But one other thing about that period was I think I wasn't really heard and I wasn't really listened to. There was not a lot of interest within the family around me. And I'm not sure about my sister, but around me. And that makes you want to, it's like, how can I be approved of? How can I be heard? So at some level, what I've done is, my ideas have always been slightly off track, out of the box, edgy, or insane, because I want to stand out and I want to be heard.
Right.
So at some level, what I've done in business in lots of ways over the years has been an adaptive mechanism from not being heard when I was a kid.
Talk as well. One thing that anybody who knows you will know about is your humour.
Yeah.
And your off the wall humour, I would say. You said your dad was very charismatic. Do you want to tell us about his humour and your humour?
Yeah, it's interesting. I only found, because my dad died 2.5 years ago, and I've heard a few more things about him since he died. And my mum said that his father was actually very funny in company, and that my dad was shy until probably similar times when I was born, and my mum would say, come out of his shell. So what I knew of him was that whenever he was in company, he would be joking about everything. There'd be hardly a serious moment. So he'd be often ribbing people. So, I mean, he was a lay preacher. Both my parents were lay preachers in the local church. So in his sermons, he'd be kind of taking the mickey out of somebody's suit and saying somebody's a bit boring. So it's like, oh, look at Irene. Yeah, Irene, have you sorted your hair out? And everybody would laugh. Yeah, it's like, It was like, yeah, I remember saying to one of my great uncle, he turned up at some family event in a suit that was probably 20 years, maybe even older. And he'd kind of go, love the suit. I can't remember his name. Alf. This is like, is it this your Chairman Mao suit? So he'd just find these things. And it would be, there would then be a tension there because obviously some people are kind of fine with it, other people aren't.
Mm.
And so but he was very funny and had some really, he would tell jokes and he would always, so he was known as a very warm, ebullient, charismatic guy. And it was not, it was nice to have him in a room, I think. And people really felt that. And that's what we grew up with. And then at home, he'd be lying on the sofa, not saying anything, a bit kind of, So, but then as being quite a serious kid and a relatively serious teenager, probably, this then was also bubbling away within me. And I suppose that seeing life in a slightly humorous way has been there for a long time. And
What do you think, if you were like, do you think it was always there when you were younger, the humor, or like why did it suddenly start coming out, do you think?
I've never thought about this, to be honest. And it's funny as I look back, I honestly don't know whether oh man, I can't. I think as a kid, I was in the opposite of seeing life in a humorous way. Maybe as a teenager, it started to change, but I actually don't know when this side of me really emerged. Probably as a teenager, starting to feel a little bit better about things. And yes, it feels to me like it's really deep within me. But then when I look back to when I was very young, I don't think it was there. So it's a very interesting to think about for me. But it was certainly there as I went out into the world, at university. That side of me was really, really there. And the more relaxed, always, my obsession with relaxation, the more relaxed I was and am, then the funnier I would find things and the funnier I'd be in company.
So maybe you weren't so relaxed when you were younger and therefore the funny didn't come out.
I think that's, yeah, even at school, I went to a very serious secondary school. It was really strict. I was like, so it was like, oh, a lot of fear, and tension, having to, do very well. So that was, awful actually. So it feels like for many, many reasons that was pushed down. But so it was lovely. It was lovely and kind of, even my early jobs, there wasn't much of an opportunity for humor. But once I basically went into the advertising industry at around, don't know what age, 26 or something. And by then, finally doing what I wanted and being creative, I was a copywriter. And we got into an agency that was a really fantastic agency, one of the best advertising agencies at the time in the world, I reckon, really. It was famous at the time for doing tango. Anybody of a certain age would know what the tango was about in the 1990s.
You've been tangoed.
Yeah. So in this amazing agency with fantastic, creative, intelligent people. And it was like, then I was really able to be myself. And it felt like being myself. It's like just having silly, stupid ideas a lot of the time, but with intelligence behind it and having a laugh a lot of the time as well with teams. Yeah.
I'm interested in the creative process in an agency. Like, how did ideas come about? How did the tango idea come about, which is nuts, frankly?
Yeah. It's, traditionally advertising agencies kind of protect the creatives. So they're on a separate floor. They're in their own little offices, glass offices. And they're then only really talking to creative directors so it's a kind of very insular thing. And then creatives, professional creators, which is what we were, and probably what I am, will then often not talk about how that process works because they don't want it. If they work it out, they'll break it somehow. I wasn't like that. And I used to talk to, there was a guy, I used to go and lecture at Southampton University. I think this guy's still there. And he'd come in, he'd go around to creators. Very few creators wanted to speak to him, but then try and analyze exactly this question. How does it work? What do you do? And for me, so I was very interested from early on, what is going on here? I'm happy to work it out. And for me, it was relaxation. The more I relaxed. And so you'd have It's like you put all the stuff in, you put the brief in, you put all the information in, and just kind of effectively hang out, which is why there were many before kind of Google and everything. There were pool tables and whatever in creative areas and advertising agencies in London, at least. So and I used to think then that everybody, if they had the time and were able to relax, everybody could be creative.
Mm.
And I'm not sure that that's actually true. I'm not sure that that's true. I've met people who find it very, very hard to be creative, but
do they also find it hard to relax?
Yes, they do. But I'm guessing even when they're relaxed, there's some people that find it difficult. But I think for many of us, if we can relax enough and put the kind of we would have called the kind of client brain, which is like, okay, how I need to make the logo bigger, I need to do that, I need to make sure the brief is absolutely well, as long as it's saying the right things. A lot of adverts that you see now, I don't see that many, but I'm seeing more and more now as they appear on freaking whatever
everywhere.
Prime. Yeah, they're reappearing, aren't they?
Yeah, Netflix.
So we're being rebattered by advertising. They're basically the brief in the voiceover. So you can listen to it because people aren't watching everything. So you basically hear. So they're not that. Most adverts are not that creative. They're not ideas. They're just almost like the creative brief. Like, this is what this is.
Yeah.
But we come from an era when it was a different world.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Funnily enough, I looked up the Tango adverts the other day. Nothing to do with you. It was something else. I was like, these are bonkers. That's what reminded me that really how crazy they were. What I found, and it's really interesting you say that about relaxation and creativity, is it was an unexpected consequence for me of leaving my very, very busy corporate job and working for myself and having much more time, much less stress, just my creativity's gone through the roof. Like, I did not expect that at all, but I have too many ideas now. And like before, I would say my creativity was probably at 2 out of 10. And now it's a sort of 9 out of 10 in terms of ideas. And it absolutely is to do with I think it's partly being more relaxed and it's partly having more time to take in more inspiration.
Yeah.
So I can listen to more things, read more things, watch more things, engage in stuff. And then I'll be doing whatever. And these ideas will just pop out. Like I've got a notebook in the car, in the glove compartment of the car. I'm often leaving myself notes on my phone. I'm constantly texting myself, like, because they pop up wherever, don't they? Quite often for me, walking the dog. But yeah, it's there was no space for it previously, and it's radically different now.
That's great. I mean, you say there was no space for it at some level, because the logical left brain is the kind of logical language planning future past side of the brain. And then we used to talk, actually, early days of fuck it. We used to talk about fuck it being effectively a bridge from the left brain to the right brain. When you say fuck it, you say fuck it to that form of thinking, the logical thinking. You go to the right side of the brain. The right side of the brain tends to be more present. It's more open. It's playful. It is about being relaxed. It's more in touch with spirituality. It's intuitive. Kind of just hanging out, basically. Just it's like bean bags on the right hand side of the brain.
Yeah, it's like hanging out with yourself, isn't it? Yeah.
So exactly what you say. You had more time. We have to think in a left brain way in certain contexts, in certain jobs, in certain crises in life. That we need our left brains, of course. The problem is most people are mainly in their left brains, and I know I've made it a kind of I've recognized it as so important back then for my job and my career to be able to in an instant go into the right brain. And that is essentially, I trained as a hypnotherapist in the 1990s, being interested in this. Okay, what do you do to instantly relax? Okay, do this and do that and do that. Sometimes it's just a feeling, sometimes it's some breathing, there are many, many ways to relax, but that takes you to the right brain and off you go. And so it's that combination of knowing what to do to get to the right brain, and that affects your whole nervous system. And then also having the confidence to be creative, essentially. It's like, I can be creative. So yeah. And that was one thing I wanted to mention was about this, around that time when I was finding, I've being myself more. And then, we did some early commercials that I did was for Pot Noodle with this kind of Welsh character played by Peter Bainham. and they'd say it's not. And the idea was that it's they were saying pot noodle was healthy. So we had a competing campaign. One was pot noodles are actually healthy. So it's like a health campaign around pot noodles. They've got lots of vitamins and everything else in it. And then a character who was very kind of guy at home on his video camcorder saying, how can it be healthy? It's too gorgeous. So his thing was, it's too gorgeous was the line. And so doing this, and to do that, we worked with a chap called Armando Iannucci, which many people will probably know.
Thank you for saying that, because I've never known how to pronounce his last name.
It's not easy. And I knew him from the day-to-day on the radio and then on the TV. And he must have started with Steve Coogan doing Alan Partridge, probably on the radio back then. This is in the mid-90s. So I knew him from a lot of Radio 4 stuff and the comedy that he was doing. And he's basically a comedy godfather. He's done amazing stuff over the years. So if you don't know him, look him up. Amazing character. But yeah, and a comedy godfather for the last 30 years. And he chose Peter Bainham for this character. And they were writing the Alan Partridge for many, many, many years. So I basically got to, for about 2 years, hang out with the very, very top of British comedy at the time and since, really. But we'd be writing stuff together for the adverts. We'd be eating together. I used to actually travel home with Armando because he didn't live that far away from where I lived in the 1990s. So I got to know these people. But just wandering around with them, and I got an insight into, the top level comedy brain. And it was very, very good to have that, because I'd see that we'd just be walking down Oxford Street and they'd do a little skit, people selling perfume. They'd do a skit on that. They'd do a skit. So I could see that they were just seeing through. It wasn't a thing where they'd switch on when they were writing. It was just there. There was a comic
it's like a lens. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really so at some level that allowed me, it's like, okay, I've got some of that. And it allowed me to sit back even more into it. So I know what that feels like when I am often. So maybe my dad was the same, but when I'm in company, then it's like a mist. Everything I see and hear, I find funny. And then I love just, playing with and rolling off, really. And it's a bit like a trance. And it's quite intoxicating for me. And I can get overexcited about it. I'm relaxed, but it's an excited relaxed.
There's something very magical about making people laugh, isn't there? That's, that I think it's the right word. That's intoxicating. It feeds itself.
Yeah.
You can see how people, get, like, the idea of something like stand-up comedy terrifies me, but I could see how, if you get it right, it would be amazing to have that sense of just, getting people to go from one laugh to the next would be incredible.
Well, we can all feel it when we're in company and other people are laughing after something we've said, and it feels very, very good. And I've noticed, and this is a bit of the outsidery thing, or I've noticed that a real element to my ribbing and humor. I've tried for it to be less ribbing of other people.
Yes.
I've been aware of that.
Yes.
And I've really tried. I really, really try to make it just funny around things. And also it gets you off serious conversations when something serious. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. The humor, the outsider bit is this. I've been aware for a long time, since those pop noodle adverts, that what I like is for people to be a bit confused. It's like there's nothing delights me more than over a dinner table saying something and people kind of look at me and they go, what the fuck are you talking about? And then slowly they realize. So it's not just the laugh that I like, it's the confusion before the laugh. And that's, I think, I've tried to analyze this, especially in recent years. And I think what I'm doing is I'm trying to replicate a kind of childhood thing of like, will you approve of me, even if I'm going to see how far I can push you away and see if you stay with me, I think. I'm going to see how far I can take you to the edge, but you still love me. I think that's what I'm doing when I talk about that. So there's always been that pushing away element to what I've done. So even fuck it, when we had the idea for fuck it and started to put it out there, it pushed a lot of people away. In a spiritual, in a Mind Body Spirit Festival was where I first did it, actually, in London. And they were getting letters, the organization, from different organization, Christian organizations, saying, unless you uninvite Parkin, the Satanist Parkin, then we're not going to be supporting you.
Because of the word fuck it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it created a real stir at in various places at the beginning. And that's really me. It's like, okay, I'm going to push you away, but I've actually got something really interesting. In this case, not funny, but really interesting and really profound to say. But you've got to come with me on this. So
what's that phrase? So no, it's not no news, it's bad news, is it? No, it's like no expose. I can't think of the right phrase. Yeah, it's exposure, regardless of whether no bad
publicity.
Publicity, that's the word.
Yeah, it's
not no such thing as bad publicity. Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
It. Got there eventually.
We did.
Right, let's talk about someone very dear to both of us.
Yeah,
who you met whilst you were at the advertising agency. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, that advertising agency. Yeah.
Talk to us about Gaia. You mentioned her earlier.
Yeah, Gaia. So we kind of first met probably about 1995. I didn't really get together for a while. So Gaia, she was an Italian art director in this agency, very, very kind of glamorous. She's
very hot.
Very hot, very beautiful woman, very glamorous clothes, and very kind of direct and straight. She'd just tell you how things are. So I'd have a few conversations with them. By the way, she did stop smoking and hasn't smoked since around that time, 96 or something like that. But yeah, really a very, very interesting person. And we started to get to know each other a bit more. And as quick as I can tell this story, when we kind of met, really, we were sent away on a presentation skills course for creatives. So creatives, they have lots of ideas, but they can't sell them and they can't express them very easily. So we're sent away on a course, and I, doing my thing of outsider, pushing it to the extreme, did a little talk. I won't say the details, but I did a talk. The brief was engage the group and tell a story roughly based on some time of your life and engage the group and entertain them. So I did, and I made it look like something was real that was not really, right? I was making it up, but it shocked the hell out of them. It was like, one guy wanted to punch me, and Gaia was furious that I'd done this. And she did her talk afterwards on me and how furious she was with me. This was great. So that was a great beginning. But over that course of these 3 or 4 days, we're chatting more. I realized that we're into similar things. She was training and counseling. I've always been into Tai Chi and Qigong and meditation, etc. Realized we're quite similar. And at the end of these 4 days, the course leader was talking about relationships. I don't know why, but she was talking about relationships. She said, some people never ever work in a relationship. There's like, you can see that they're opposites. There's no way they do it. Like John and Gaia. Yeah. 2 years later, we invited her to our wedding. But
did you take that as a challenge?
We did actually look at each other and go, why was she saying da-da-da? Because we had, really started to get on. But there was this thing, and this is the thing about both Gaia and me in my life that's then important in what we have done and we do in business. And maybe I was even doing in advertising, which is in a family where nobody ever says anything. No, that truth is ever told, where everything is suppressed, which is what I grew up in. And as I said, I was the one who'd then say stuff, come out with stuff. Gaia is somebody that is, you know her very well. She's just very direct. She just says stuff. She's very clear. And she finds it very, very easy to be clear, to the point in the early years of our relationship. She'd say, to make up a name, Tanny is going out on Friday, but she didn't mention it to me. I'm just going to call her up and tell her. And I go, no. So I spent a lot of time going, no. There's a different way of doing this. There's a different way, the kind of diplomatic Libran English. So we'd have that. But I learned from her so deeply the power of being clear and honest. and then how to do it more. So this clearly was there before, but it was almost like, as well as the wonder of Gaia and the beauty and all that she is, that of course I was attracted to, and we were really getting on. There was this definite, and I saw it really, really early on. It's like, oh my God, she is so clear. I want more of that. And it's lovely to walk through life alongside her with that clarity, and also bringing up our boys with that clarity, and just saying things as they are. Really beautiful. So yeah, and I, at some level, I know I've had this thing. I used to think, when in advertising, so for brands, working with big brands, I worked with a lot of big brands over the years. My conclusion, I would have expressed this a long time ago. My conclusion was that if you can authentically express the kind of DNA or the heart of a company, authentically meaning, truly express it, honestly express it, accurately express it, then there will be people that connect with that accurate and honest and authentic expression of it, and you will have an audience and you will have customers. So for example, if a company just wants to make money and make profit, but they're saying we'll make profit for you, you will find your audience. So this thing, and I did notice this watching brands over a long time, they simply have to capture, the marketers have to try and capture the essence of that company. Or if it's for us, for individuals doing it, if we can just express who we really are, this is beautiful, really, because it's much easier to be yourself and express it in marketing than it is to kind of create some weird veneer or sheen of something or be something else. So it's essentially the being me thing, which is what Gaia has. That applies to all companies and all brands. They just have to be themselves and express it. Even if there's warring factions within a company, express that. It's like, well, we're always arguing. I don't know what there's lots of. So yeah, it's this clarity there has really obviously been around a long time in my life, and
it feels quite brave, doesn't it? I really love what you just said there, and it feels like it's a brave thing to do, because what you're saying is, this is who I am, or we are, as a company, as an organization. It's a bit take it or leave it, isn't it? Like and I found that with my coaching clients. So I do what we call chemistry calls often beforehand. So someone will be choosing a coach.
Yeah.
And I'm very clear, and I've got much clearer about what it is that I offer. And what I offer is something that allows them to go deeper, because of the developmental trauma therapy training that I did with Gaia. And some people literally run towards me with open arms, and you can see it. And I know in about 95% of those chemistry calls whether someone's going to work with me or not, because I can see it. They're interested, they're asking questions, it resonates. And others, they literally can't get off the call fast enough. Like they're just, and then and I know that too, but there's something about that real clarity of, this is what I offer. Now, I could do all of these other things, and that's what I used to be like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. But actually having that clarity is more successful for me than being trying to be everything to everybody.
Absolutely. There's a phrase, I heard this from a chap called Stu McLaren, who's an expert in memberships for many years. And he says, love me or hate me. There's no money in the middle.
I love that.
And it really is true, but it takes a lot of confidence. I'm just started watching, probably quite late into the series here, but Colin from Accounts. And have you seen that?
No.
I think it's on BBC iPlayer. And it's this Australian series, kind of romantic comedy. It's lovely, actually, about this couple. But the guy, if you haven't seen it, it's really good. It's really funny. And the main character, who owns a brewery, it's about him and this woman, a trainee doctor, and they're coming together and they're not, and everything else. But the main character, well, actually, both of them are like that. They just say it. I love it. And there was an episode I watched over the weekend where somebody comes in, kind of corporate, trying to buy the brewery. And he's sitting there being wined and dined, probably seeing big figures. The guy's offering big figures. And he kind of goes, actually, mate, I'm not sure. Tell me why this would be a good idea for me. And there's that level of like, you're sitting within yourself, happy to be yourself, not chasing a deal or a client. Like, here I am, as you say, take it or leave it. And that is beautiful. It takes a lot, it takes guts, and it takes a long time to get to. And maybe it takes some success and some money in the bank to be able to do it more. You see people like Ricky Gervais. He's very happy to go. He's like, it's fine. I don't need it. I don't need this. Don't need to do this. It's fine. He's got enough money in the bank. He can say crazy things. It's like a bit harder at the beginning of your career, but it really does seem the clarity is, wow. It just cuts through everything, doesn't it? Like a knife through butter.
It almost feels like the anti-hustle culture of just kind of the grind, and there's kind of a stillness and a presence to it of, I'm confident in what it is that I have to offer, and it attracts people.
I mean, I've only learnt what you might call sales calls. Because I've done marketing all my life, I've been writing all my life, but I've only done sales calls or learned how to do them in the last 18 months, which I would call right fit calls now. So I do quite a lot of right fit calls, similar to what you're talking about, the chemistry calls. And I love them. I absolutely love them, because proper sales, I've never really understood, I've never studied or been a salesperson or understood sales. But real sales is basically you're trying to work out, you're basically honestly saying, this is what, you're listening, first of all, where are you and where would you like to get to? I just want to hear. So you'd listen a lot. Where are you? Okay. And what are your problems? What's the issues? What's the pain? And where would you like to get to? Where there's obviously less issues, fewer issues and less pain. It's like, okay, well, I can kind of understand it. You play it back to them. So I see, well, what you want is this. This is where you want. Okay, well, this is kind of what we do, and it sounds like that probably could help. How does that sound? If that could help, does that sound? So you're just working out whether, honestly speaking, and I've done such a lot in the last couple of years that, like you said, the people are going to. I know I've had moments where I can go, actually, I don't know whether I can help you.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't know whether I can. And I try and work it out. I spend about 20 minutes trying to work out whether I can help them. Either they're not, for me, in stress and relaxation, either they're not stressed, they're not stressed,
enough.
And they really aren't. It's like they're generally okay and they just wanted to talk to me, or something, or interested in fuck it or something. I want to come on a retreat. Or there's a level of anxiety that's more pass them to Gaia and to you, really, for the deeper therapy. But that therefore is a beautiful. It's just being clear. It's like, okay, this is the kind of thing I do. I'm happy to say I am really good at certain things. The issue that you have at the moment, I'm really good at solving that. In fact, I've got 3 examples of people from the last 6 months who've gone from that to that, just like you. I'm happy to talk about that, and it's true. I'm really good at certain things. Other things, no, find somebody else.
No, I think it's really good advice to anyone, and people are really afraid of niching or niching. Is that a word, American?
Yeah,
niching.
yeah.
Find your niche.
If you got a niche, scratch it. There you go.
Niching, but I think because sometimes I think when we niche, it's really, really narrow, but it doesn't have to be quite. I think that for me was a barrier. For me was I don't want to niche, but actually, your niche could be quite wide. It doesn't have to be just one thing that you're offering, but it's about, being very clear about what that thing is.
The difference between now and, let's say, 30 years ago is that with technology, is that if a niche, you got me niching now. Nietzsche is the philosophy of niching by Frederick Parkin. You can niche even if it's a tiny niche, but there's a tiny, relatively small number of people, but you can access them all over the world with a digital product. Bang.
Yes.
You can spend the rest of your life selling to maybe 1,000 people, but there's only 30 people in Britain. You know what I mean? It's like,
yes.
So technology has changed, should have changed our attitude to niches as well as.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, love that. Right. Let's talk about Bucket and how that came about. Because it's, like you say, it's often what you're known for, and was without a doubt radical at the time. I remember telling my mum I was going on a Bucket retreat, which she thought was hilarious. And I think probably the whole village knew by the time I actually went, because she thought it was funny and she told everybody. And she still laughs about it now, nearly 20 years later.
Right.
Yeah, tell us about Fuck It.
It comes from again, I mean, actually, we're just talking about sales. Actually, we talked about sales. We talked about creativity in our chat as well. And I have lots of ideas around creativity and my creativity. I have noticed that, as well as actually, I said about coming when you relax. Actually, I'm most creative when I'm feeling very tense about something and I need to resolve it and therefore relax. That seems to be my process. So if I've got a blank page and I know I have to crack it within half an hour, that tension squeezes out ideas and then I relax with the ideas. So it's not actually entirely true what I was saying earlier on about relaxation. So there's a tension to it. So Fuck It was like, there were lots of tension. I think in my life, despite the kind of humor, it's like I was bothered too much about what other people thought of me, around where I was in life. I was bothered about, I was still not very well in the late 90s. It's one of the reasons we went to Italy in the early noughties when we went to Italy. So I wasn't very well and I was desperate to heal. I was desperate to find a way to heal, holistic. I just wanted to physically heal and probably emotionally heal as well. So there was a lot of, at some level, I was a relatively happy person, always have been, but there was also pain there and tension and ideas, kind of relatively restricted and limited ideas. So being with Gaia, this time we had the boys, so bringing new life into the world and the gorgeousness of, the twins, they are two boys, Arco and Leone. So two examples of life force, pure life force entering our lives. I think this life force in me started to emerge, which was then expressed as an idea, even if it wasn't the words, an idea of Fuck It, which is like, well, who cares about, how I'm doing, how successful I am, when I've done this by that age? Who cares? This is kind of, I don't, I achieve certain things. This stuff doesn't matter. What matters is just when I'm sitting back and being, Well, so there was a Fuck It quality to us over quite a few years where both of us left our jobs. We packed up our house in London. We got on the road. We decided to do something in Italy. We took the boys when they were 1 years old and in a camper, all those things. And then we borrowed loads of money and borrowed about £1 million and
Wow.
I bought a place and did it up. It's like we were fearless and we were real kind of, we're going to fucking do this. I mean, it's madness in many ways, but there was this kind of life forcey quality to it. And so there were quite a lot of Fuck It moments, even if we probably were saying fuck it. I can't really remember now, but there were like Fuck It-y moments anyway. And then a massive one came when we opened the retreat center. You invested all this money, done massive difficulties as normal, building a place, permissions, license. Oh, it's terrible, really hard.
And
So
probably much more complex in Italy as well.
Really? Yeah. No, man, I didn't really understand that. And hugely more bureaucratic. But we opened in 2004, did some weeks that we ran about meditation, Tai Chi. We did yoga, some yoga holidays. And I was really sick. It was really hard work. And my health. So I thought being in the sun would make me better. Being in the countryside would make me better. Being amongst pine trees, we bought 100 acres of pine trees because I was told pine trees are very good for you. They produce more oxygen and chi. I'm going to get better. When I've been on holiday for 2 or 3 weeks, I get slightly better. So I'm going to get better being there. And by the end of that summer, the first summer, I was more sick. So there's this moment where I remember, and I looked in the mirror of our little room in the house, in the guest house. And I wouldn't have been looking very well. I wasn't feeling very well. Wasn't sleeping very well. I was quite nauseous. My skin was probably not very good. And it's like, oh my God. It's like, I wanted this thing for so long to be well, and I'm not getting well. In fact, if I'm more sick, it's like, oh my God, this is hopeless. What a idiot I am. Brought the family out, changed everything, borrowed all that money, sold all this, da-da-da-da, and here we are. And then I went, well, it's not a bad life, is it? Out here, it's sunny every day with the family, hanging out with lovely people, lunch and dinner, teaching nice stuff. It's pretty good. It's like, so I went, well, then maybe I'm not going to heal. Maybe I'm going to be like this forever. it's not a bad life. Just kind of enjoy it. And so it was a real fuck it then. And it was a significant fuck it for me. And I could, I could almost feel the weight going from my shoulders. I went, okay, let's kind of live, really. Just live. And then within a few weeks, I was getting a bit better. And within a few months, I was better than I've been in my adult life, I think. And by the next summer, 2005, all symptoms cleared, and feeling then so sleeping and feeling so alive and full of this life force. And it was a fuck it. At some point, it became a kind of fuck it thing where we were saying it and then starting to teach it. And, we taught 1 week initially in 2005. But it was like, oh my God, if people just forget about that. It doesn't matter about it. It's not so, don't be so serious about it. Who cares? It's like, so there was that to it. And it was a huge energy. And I poured that into that first book that I wrote towards the end of 2005. But I wrote it very, very quickly initially, like in 2 weeks, and then added bits over the course of a year or 2 years. But I wrote it so it was like almost like pulled out of this state. And yeah, very, very powerful. And then I think people just could feel that life energy from the book. So it did, people were writing about it, people were hearing about it, and it did start to go out and then went to other countries. So, and then we were working really, that then led a lot of the work because it was doing well. We were doing more Fucky Weeks. I was doing more talks. I was asked to write more books. And then so it's how you elaborate the idea. And it went in different directions. Fuck it, do what you love, fucking therapy and everything else. But brought lots of people in. But yeah.
I was just thinking about the internet randomly, because if you think about at that time, like if you had been 10 years earlier,
yeah,
like I must have found you via the internet. I think I have no idea how I found you, but that ability, like you say, the technology has changed things. So your ability to get that message out there, and anybody, I mean, I know a lot of your initial clients were from the UK.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just thinking about how different businesses and people who maybe are setting up businesses now, what a different experience that was maybe in the 90s or in the early 2000s when, social media wasn't around in the same way at all. And it's just a very, very different experience.
It's usually different. I mean, I'm used to broadcast, push media, really, which is you create a message and you send it out. It's clearly completely changed. I mean, I've always thought, so that's how when we opened The Hill in 20 years ago, yes, we were doing some advertising in magazines, in health magazines, Mind, Body, Spirit magazines in the UK. And it was just, and the advert was actually a woman doing yoga with a burp in a thing. It's just burping basically. And it says like Holistic Holidays Italian Nosh was the, and that really caught people. So we had a bit of an idea around this thing. But you're right, you're pushing a message out. And just in marketing in general. So that we come from a broadcast era, from the broadcasting, and now this is two ideas that you're making me thinking of. I think make me think of here. One is that the best type of marketing at all times, no matter what the era, is pull marketing. So instead of pushing a message out, you pull. People are just drawn to your thing, and that is what the best brands do. So that is when you create something that's controversial or makes people talk about it, or is so good that you need it. So you're getting people just queuing up to buy it. So that idea is really good. And of course, with social media, it's changed from broadcast to peer-to-peer and chatting, which is really, I'm not a natural social media person, but it is quite a lovely step on, really, that you're just encouraging conversations and talking about stuff and being yourself, and people get it and then are drawn to you. Yeah.
Yeah. It's different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's move to your final thing. Oh, and actually just when you said The Hill, I just realized that it was The Hill That Breathes. That was the name of your retreat, which is a lovely, was that the name of the place? Like, was it called that? Or you named like the place the mountain bit that you bought?
Yeah. We bought a hill, and it was called, can't remember what it was called, Calorecto or something, the House of Lorecto. So it was effectively the whole of a hill. What we often do, or what we've definitely done in the past, is we'd draw out, effectively put a little kind of what we want to find, manifest. So we wanted a hill. We wanted it to be full of pine trees because they're, as I said, oxygen chi. Wanted it to be surrounded by water. And we had a list of things, probably a horseshoe shape. And so when we went to that hill for the first time, oh my God, tick, 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 tick. And so it was a hill, and we were Guy was trained as a breath worker amongst many other things. So we were very into breathing at the time, and the trees, these pine trees, breathe. So it was that. And it felt a bit kind of B-movie to me, The Hill That Breathes, which unlike a kind of retreat center, normally called them something else. So I like that name, and it sounded good in Italian as well. La collina che respira.
Yeah, exactly. Love it in Italian. Also, the most amazing place. Like, I just loved going there. Most incredible place.
Yeah.
Let's.
Can I just say it is?
Yeah, go ahead.
A Dutch couple took over from us, and they now have a lot of Dutch people going there. They're called Villa Marcy. So the place is still there. They still run holidays from there and do lots of weddings and everything. So it's a place that we go back to occasionally. It is a very special place for us. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I think I developed my love of swinging in hammocks. The hill, you had hammocks all dotted around.
We did.
And I spent a lot of time, and I was thinking about that the other day randomly, and how I think that relates to when I was a kid. I used to swing on the swing a lot at our house. We had a swing in the garden, and I used to spend quite a lot of time sat on that swing in my own little world. And I suddenly thought, I wonder if that's why I really like swinging in a hammock. There's something obviously very soothing about it, but it's weird.
Yeah.
But also, it was the first time I'd come across is that how we say it? Geodesic dome?
Exactly. Yes. You do see them around now, don't you? There's a lot.
Yes. People have them as like little greenhouses and things.
That's right.
I've seen, but it was huge, wasn't it? Absolutely huge dome.
It was. It's very special, right? You had to walk down to it right in the middle. We basically spread things out because we had a lot of land. We spread the pool was a walk through the woods, and the dome was on the other side, another walk through down into the woods and amongst it. It was really lovely. We had some very, very special times there. Yeah.
I remember dancing in there at night, just having the music on really loud because we were in the middle of nowhere. There was no one to bother.
No.
Just leaping about.
Yeah.
Let's talk about presence. This is something that's really important to me. I'm obsessed with this idea of presence and open-hearted presence. Tell me what presence means to you. A lot of celebrities would talk. I mean, it's a kind of cliche to say, "Oh, we need to be more in the now," isn't it? I think most of us know that we should try to be more in the now. And then I'd probably say facetiously, well, we can't be anything else but in the now. We can't live in the future, live in the past. But so clearly, what we're talking about is our heads, generally speaking, and our heads are they're lingering and over the past or looking back regretfully or happily or planning for the future. So we kind of know what it means to say, I need to be more present. I need to be more in the now. But I think most of us as adults aren't at any time, really. We're moving through this infinite series of nows without being in the now in that way that we understand it. So, and I kind of know what it's, we talked about my childhood. I know as a kid, despite these dark times, I know, and like many children their brains are in the alpha frequency, actually, which is they're probably more in the right hemisphere of the brain. Alpha frequency, which is what we are when we're really relaxed and when we go into trance as adults. As adults, mainly in the beta frequency, mainly left brain. So kids' brains up to what age, it depends on the childhood, but up to about the age 6 or 7. You're in alpha, your right brain, and you're present. So even through the darkest stuff, and I can't remember being in hospital, you're still present. You're there. I said I wasn't predicting what it'd be like to be in pain for the rest of my life or anything. You're just present. And then the glories of life manifest kind of unfold before you. Now, whether you're conscious of that or not, as a kid, I feel very blessed to be able to remember what I was experiencing as a child much of the time. The kind of the sweetness, the loveliness, smells and the sounds and the breeze. And I remember it.
I know what it's like from then to be present. And it's a different experience being present as an adult because there's the more conscious context to it. But yeah, I know that when I am relaxed and I sit back and I'm just so in meditation or whenever I am or can, I know what it's like. I enjoy being present, but it's a constant kind of coming and going, really. It seems to be the lot for most of us of coming and going from it. Yeah. And it's not easy to talk about. It's not easy to do, but you kind of know it when you're there.
I have an obsession about it when working with teams. I think that teams don't give each other the gift of presence often. No. People, particularly these days, when we've got so much technology that allows us to, people will be, on their laptops, on their phones, walking in and out, and particularly when we're on Zoom or Teams or whatever, people are doing other things and you're not actually present. Most meetings, I think, would be half the length if everybody in the room was actually present, physically and mentally present, because we'd all be listening to each other and connecting. And for me, presence has been, I'm definitely one of those people. I'm not someone who lives in the past. I'm definitely one of those people who's always thinking about the future. So the present, is not somewhere I've spent a lot of time, I think. But that's one thing that's really changed for me, is particularly when I'm working with people. And for me, the presence is about connection. You can't connect to somebody unless you're both present. But that ability to really kind of tune into somebody else is, a skill that I have without a doubt learned from Gaia. Ability to kind of emotionally, energetically connect with someone. And it's really transformational for me. It's like I feel like a different person. It's really, again, an unexpected consequence of choosing to do something. That was that ability to kind of really kind of connect with people in a way that I never had done before. And it's so powerful.
It is, isn't it? It's everything. And it's like opening a door. You don't, it's a bit like I said about some dark room earlier on. You don't know. In fact, I think for those of us who are interested in being in the now and being present, there are times that we would, talk for me. I personally kind of go, oh God, no, I'm just sitting there. That's a bit boring, isn't it? I still have those thoughts around what it'd be like. So you have to try to get to the door and go through it, or that the kind of quiet for people. My mind is quite busy quite a lot of time and with creative thoughts and everything else. So to be still and quiet, which is chance to be how you get there, it's not easy. But then once you've gone through that door, once you started to open it, it's very unexpected what's there. And it's miraculous what's there, really.
Yes.
It's the miracles of life, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. I think the word magic is, it's a bit of a funny word for a lot of people, but I think there is a magic in it. And for me, that magic, what magic is that something that you just don't expect, that you don't know how it's happened. That to me is what magic is. Yeah, that's nice. Is that you don't, and actually if you start to try and unpick it, you spoil the magic. Yeah. It's like, and in fact, this, I struggle to explain this to my clients, and then maybe this is the way, is that if you see a magician and you do something, if you start to try and actually analyze how they've done it, you spoil the magic. And I think it's the same with some personal development work, is that if you start to try and understand what's happened and go into your brain to try and figure it out, you probably unpick it. And undo it, and you take some of the beauty away from it, or the power away from it. So I need to work on that analogy, I think, to try and explain it to people. I'm going to ask you 4 questions, John.
Sure. Yeah.
My typical 4 questions that I ask people. Typical sounds bad. My exciting, marvelous questions that I ask people. First one is, what's next? What's next for you? What's next for your relaxation, super relaxers? What's next?
Yeah, given what we've just been talking about, well, I am generally two things, two almost opposite things are happening in my life, actually. One is that with super relaxers, which is, so I are basically the relaxers and the super relaxers are pretty much the two things I do these days. And working on this over the last couple of years, even more, and doing a lot more meditation and a lot more breathing. Actually, I've gone a lot deeper into breathing. I'm much better at not thinking too much about what's next. I'm much better at just kind of hanging out in the work that I have to do today and not worrying and sleeping really well and just kind of going, well, I'll work that out as we go. So I'm much better at doing what I probably couldn't do for years, of going with it more, seeing what comes up, seeing what feels right at the time. So I'm definitely that. And at the same time, especially in the last few weeks, I also am a lot clearer about what's next with the business and what we need to do for the business. And I have, lists with the plans. So I am very good at doing a kind of next 10 weeks, normally next 12 weeks. I don't often work in 3 months, whatever the word is, stints, kind of spurts.
Sprints.
Thank you.
That's the IT term, isn't it? A sprint.
Is it? Yeah. So what's next is, I've got a whole list of what's next and what we're creating. But in terms of the business side of what we do, it's just beautifully, we got it. I mean, Gaia loves explaining and expanding and exploring new areas. So at some level, Gaia is emerging and iterative. And my skill is probably opposite of that, which is always trying to simplify, not deiterate or whatever the opposite of iterating is, but
converge.
A kind of, converging. So yes, it is. Gaia is that. And I'm a lot more that. And so I love the fact that we have an offering that feels very natural for both of us now, and developing that offering. So mine is just really simple. It's for relaxers, which anybody can join, and it's for people that want to be super relaxers, which is a higher ticket offer. And so fewer people can join. And then Gaia, all her work, as you know, is about being yourself. It's the Being Me therapy, which is what she's created. So she has an offering that lots of people can join. And then for people who want to train in being a trauma therapist, there's Being Me Mastery, the Being Me therapy practitioner. So we effectively have two things each, which feels really nice, really simple. And so it's like, also we're at this stage of life, a very interesting stage of life, being a bit older than you, but closing on the 660, and wondering, how does it work over the next 10 years? It's a different level of, for those younger listeners, there are different stages you go through in how you see your business and the work that you're doing. So I'm very into the idea that we have a sustainable business. And I don't mean that we're recycling the shit that we use. I mean that, we're not overstretching ourselves, that I mean, I know what revenue we have to hit to generate enough money to pay the people that work with us well, to pay ourselves okay, just to have a lovely, comfortable and sustainable business where we're happy, where the people we're working with are happy, and we're out in the world supporting people in a really beautiful way. I don't have ambition for whatever, the 6, 7, 8 figures that express. I don't have ambition for a million a year business or anything. I'm past that. That was in my 30s, probably.
Yes. I interviewed someone they were on a podcast the other day, and they talked about working for sufficiency.
Yeah.
That was their term. But again, right. I think a sort of similar age, it changes, I think, with age, about what you want, and basically for me, how hard I'm willing to work and how much I'm willing to give up in order to achieve those other things. So
yes. Yeah.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
I'd start to qualify this question as to whether I'm the kind of me from the future saying, or whether it's a kind of general. Because if it's me from the future, if it's me from now going back
me from now, you from now, to any younger age. It doesn't have to be you as a child.
I mean, I have to say, kind of catch-all. The catch-all is something like, know that you will heal. And that's physically, emotionally, I don't know what, self-esteem. So kind of broad, you're going to feel better. You will, it's going to work out, So it's probably that. I think I had a lot of doubt for many years that I could ever heal physically. And it was actually overcoming that block that I think helped me a lot. It's like I got to start imagining what it'd be like to be well. And so, yeah, and that growth, that healing never changes, does it? It's like we're always, it might, and maybe this goes back to Freud with the kind of life urge and death urge, but I'm constantly, I feel very excited a lot of the time. So a lot of this for me, this living thing, is about getting out of the way of the natural life energy that's here, that's there to be tapped. And that's a lot of your work and Gaia's work, I know. So it's what are we doing? What am I doing to stop that life energy? Because it's like a geyser of a life energy that we are, if we just can get out of the freaking way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. And that is what it feels like. It is excitement. That's what I feel. I wake up sometimes and I think, oh, and because excitement is similar to anxiety, isn't it? And then sometimes I think, oh, am I feeling anxious? I did it the other day and I thought, no, this is excitement. It's like, similar, but
gentle
not the same.
excitement to be close to the feeling I have. A gentle excitement is probably how I feel quite a bit of the time. A kind of almost like a cozy excitement. It's like, oh yeah, so it's really nice. Yeah.
Love that. Cozy excitement.
Yeah.
Books. Obviously, there's your own books that you would clearly recommend. Of all your books, you've written quite a few, haven't you? Would you recommend one above any other?
I think the first book still has a lot of energy. So Fuck It, The Ultimate Spiritual Way. People want to work out about their jobs. I wrote the one, Fuck It, Do What You Love, which is about, doing what you love, and a lot about kind of working, as many of us work now, with small businesses online. And the most recent book was called Fuck It, Be at Peace with Life Just As It Is, which is probably the one that expresses most about this idea of, this kind of sitting back into life as it is, with the world as it is, with the politics as they are, like at this age, as we were talking about earlier, at this age, things are everything goes up and down all the time. You just know it, and it's not that we're scared of shit happening. We've had shit happening. By this age, usually shit has happened. So we know the up and down, but it's like, how can I sit back as much as I can, effectively relax into life as it is? So that's a fuck it. It's like, okay, whoosh, that sense of just sitting back into it. So books the book I most recommend is the book I'm about to write.
Obviously.
Just don't quite know what it is yet. But it's about the now, actually. That's what I'm going to write next. And the other people's books. I wanted to say one thing. When I thought about, because I knew you were going to ask that question, so I did think about it. This is what I'd like to talk about, books that I might recommend. Clearly, there are many I might recommend, but I'm not going to do. But I wanted to say this, that I read both times, not always, but I read widely. So I read lots of stuff and quite quickly, or listen to lots of stuff and quite quickly. But I've always been very good at choosing something that really rings a bell for me and basically eating it every day and absorbing it and rereading it. And I think so something something reverberates, if something that rings a bell for us and is starting to work, we should then devour it. Because, most people have, and it's a very difficult exercise putting stuff into a book, writing a book. Very cheap thing, a book, whatever, 10, 12 pounds. And that's person's wisdom, thought through, condensed, styled, everything else, and then proofread and everything else. So if a kind of vibe is resonating with you around an author in this area, nonfiction, or around self-help or psychology, whatever it is, and you're really feeling it, I would just choose one and just read it and read it and read it and read it and read it until you're embodying these ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So there's certain books that I've read over and over. There's many books that I've only read part of, but I'll go back and read those particular bits. Certain things just resonate. And I think that's fascinating approach, John. Okay, what about a final thing? A title for your story. Now, come on, I've got great expectations here as your marketing background.
Oh, blimey.
I'm just going to put some pressure on here.
Yeah. But I did say that
Yeah, there you go. I'm
comes
giving you
from
the pressure.
So, and I'm going to revisit this because I did write something down. But so, what title or strapline would you give to this process,
To your story.
to my story?
Your story.
Actually, I mean, almost obviously, it'd be he said fuck it.
Yes.
That's a kind of gravestone thing, isn't it?
This is the title that I'll put on the podcast episode. So I love that one. I'll be using the stars.
Unless I see, because I haven't read it since I wrote this a couple of days ago, because I had thought about this. This is a lot more. Let me just read it out as I read it for the first time in a little while. How to throw yourself fully into what feels right, trusting that it all works out in the end, is what I wrote as a more elaborate. So, and that's probably what I and we have done. And I see our young adult boys now, Arco and Leonie, doing the same. They throw themselves fully into things, into what feels right. And I can see they are trusting generally that it will all work out in the end. So that feels a pretty nice sum up of the way that we approach things. Just like, fuck it, let's go for it.
Yeah.
Feels good. Really just chuck yourself into it. I think that changes with age, but that's pretty much what we've done. Yeah. We said fuck it. He said fuck it. I said fuck it.
Love it. Love it. John, this has been an absolute dream. I've enjoyed it so much talking to you.
Same here, Melody. Yeah,
getting to know you better.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast.
That's a pleasure. It's been lovely for me to kind of dig through some of the stuff I wouldn't normally think about as well. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to chat it through how it works.
You're welcome. I always love interviewing people who I've known for a long time, partly because I just find out so much more about them, things that I had no idea about. John and I, as we said, have spent a lot of time together particularly over the last 3 years, enjoying many a fine dinner in Italy in particular. But yes, so much in this that I really enjoyed hearing about John. And, particularly about that childhood that he had, that he described as quite dark, and that sort of interesting sort of hypocrisy that he saw, and that confusion that he felt about who were they as a family, and the image that they were projecting and the impact that had on him, I thought was really quite fascinating. And another part of our conversation that I just loved, and this, as reflections in some of the other conversations, and particularly the conversation from last week with Stefan about that interaction between relaxation, creativity, and in John's case with humour, and how that's had a profound impact on me, having more space and more time and ability to be more creative, and how I feel really strongly that in organizations, we're so much on the hamster wheel and we're so much running and running and running. We don't have the time to sit back and relax and take in additional information, seek out alternative points of view, and really allow ourselves to flow and to come up with truly creative ideas. The third thing that I loved about the conversation with John was this conversation that we had about this sort of anti-hustle culture. There's so much of it about, particularly on social media at the moment, particularly in the entrepreneurship world, about, everybody should hustle and grind, and it's all about success and, 6-figure businesses, 7-figure businesses, and a lot about pushing. And John and I share this belief that actually it's much more about relaxing into it. And this idea of, this is what I've got to offer, this is who I am, and you can take it or leave it. And I think that you put out a certain energy, and that energy attracts or reflects or deflects rather the people who shouldn't be working with you, or you don't want to work with them. So I'm a great believer that if we're really clear about who we are and what it is that we've got to offer, and let's not pretend to be something other than we are, then people will be naturally drawn to working with us. And the final thing, and this is where I first came across John and what he's well known for, is this idea of saying, fuck it. And I really do recommend going and reading his books. They're excellent. But I really liked his own, this story I'd not heard before about him when they first went out to Italy and set up the Hill That Breathes, which was their retreat center, was actually, it made him more ill and he was more stressed, and he had his own fuck it moment in terms of relaxing into it. And that's the birth of fuck it. I hadn't realized that they hadn't developed that before they went out there, and actually partly going out there and setting up that retreat center is what gave him the idea from his own personal experience to really fuck it and live in the moment and enjoy his life as it was. My guest next week is Lisa Smith from Ginger Bakers. She runs an amazing small bakery in the Lake District, and hers is an awesome story of some of the challenges that she's experienced in her entrepreneurial journey. She makes the most delicious cakes. And she has a really, really interesting story and a really great way of telling it. So really do tune in next week. This podcast is brought to you by Liberare Consulting. If you enjoyed today's show, why not click on the subscribe button so you are among the first to hear about new episodes? And we would love for you to do us a favour and click on the share button and share this episode with one of your friends.